Hello class, my name is Professor Thursday and welcome back to the History of Music Abridged. Mods and rockers were two large social subgroups that came out of the early 60s. Rockers modeled themselves after the Young Ones movie with Marlon Brando, leather jackets, white t-shirts, jeans, pompadour hair, and motorcycles. They were easily recognizable for their leather motorcycle jackets and penchant for 50s rock and roll music. The mods, on the other hand, were middle class, highly educated with fashionable haircuts, fashionable suits, usually from Italy or France, and easily recognizable for gravitating towards the Vespa scooters. Their taste in music was anything modern from the US that you couldn't find in England, such as rhythm and blues and Motown. In whole, the mods represented the future of the British youth, the new, while the rockers represented the blue-collar workers of the past. Thanks to the influence of sensational journalism, the media depicted animosity between the mods and the rockers, thus creating turf war. Eventually, as the 70s grew closer, the mods would fade out and the rockers would become known as teddies. Now, there was another group within this mix known as the Skinheads. Unlike today, Skinheads were formed out of the blending of cultures of young British blue-collar workers and their black immigrant co-workers from Jamaica. Jamaicans had a sense of style that the whites were keen on. Their look comprised of an American preppy clothing line as if from an Ivy League school, work boots, and very short hair. The newspapers at the time painted them as hooligans after a cleanly shaven mod was caught in an altercation with a teddy. The mods grew their hair out enjoying the hippie movement, while the skinheads began to slip out of the main scene and headed towards the terraces. Skinheads were always violent. They grew up with violent environments, violent times, and surrounded by friends and family who were also violent. The only place they could be violent and feel safe was at football games. And this subgroup is one of the first soccer hooligans.
Hello, mate, all right? Yeah, I'm all right.
When punk emerged, the punkers were despised by all, not just by everyday Brits, but by the teddies and the skinheads. The teddies strongly disliked punkers as they stole much of their wardrobe from the teddies, so the turf war continued. Punkers, unlike the skinheads, did not travel in groups, thus a lone punker was often targeted and ganged up on by the teddies. Doubly so after the December 1st incident. The skinheads, largely influenced by Jamaican reggae and dub, were highly intimidated by punk rockers' chaotic presence. Many of the punk bands, including the Sex Pistols, scared off the skinheads. Oddly enough, there was one punk band that the skinheads did follow, and that band was Sham 69. Sham 69 formed in 1975. They didn't have an art school background as many of the English punk bands did at the time. They brought in football chant backup vocals and had an implicit political popularism. It is likely that the skinheads loved football and the band's use of chants was the main reason why the band attracted such a large skinhead following. Donovan Letts was born in London 1956 from Jamaican immigrants. He eventually owned his clothing store in 1975 named Acme Attractions and gathered the attention of The Clash, Sex Pistols, Patti Smith, Debbie Harry, and Bob Marley. Music was a huge focus of his life. Letts helped move the punk scene in several different ways. First, he managed the group The Slits, which opened for The Clash during their White Riot tour. He was a filmmaker and directed a punk rock movie and did several music videos of The Clash. But most importantly, he was a DJ at the Roxy. Bands didn't play 24/7 after all, and at the day of opening, there were no punk albums to play. He would often play reggae and dub at the Roxy. Jamaican music was not unfamiliar to many Londoners as the West Indian immigrants came back to the motherland to help rebuild after World War II and then stayed, thus forming Jamaican communities within the heart of London. But this clash between two worlds, Jamaican reggae and British punk, helped create the second wave of ska. Politically, Britain was divided. The economic woes created schisms in the political idealism of many Britons. Most people agreed that the standards and practices put in place by the current government wasn't working, and everyone had a different agenda of how to fix it. The National Front Party, the UK's versions of the alt-right, began targeting football fans in the 1970s, many of which were skinheads. The same working-class skinheads that traveled in groups and wore boots like an army were targeted to join a party that played an ethno-nationalist platform. The goal of the party was to disrupt the multiracial society to a point where it would break, become segregated, and rise from the ashes to form a new solid society. The biggest problem with skinheads is that not everyone was racist, and all skinheads had a similar style and fashion. Ska bands, also known as two-tone, were multiracial bands with diverse music. The original skinheads loved the music, and the National Front skinheads loved a good disturbance, but you couldn't tell them apart. The media expected skinheads to be troublemakers, and they lived up to it, regardless of personal politics. Ska bands quickly tried to disassociate themselves with skinheads. The Sham 69 from earlier were forced to break up due to the violence of the skinheads were creating. The skinheads were without a home, and the National Front pushed them to Oi, the British hardcore punk sound. The punk scene began to lose its roots and fill itself with trendy university types trying to get rich by making artistic rock bands. Punk was made for the working class misfits, an ideology that the skinheads could get behind. The media connected skinheads to white nationalists and the term Oi to Nazi propaganda instead of the Cockney expression of, hey,